Okay, so we're gonna do the newborn exam, and before this stage, I will have already washed my hands and spoken with the parents to make sure that they can give proper consent about what we're gonna be doing here. And I'm gonna make sure to be documenting everything that I'm finding. And by this point, I will already have the baby's name, the mother's name, date of birth, and time of birth. And everything else I will be finding out and charting right now. Okay, so at this point I have undressed my baby, just overall getting a good assessment of the condition of the child. I am just gonna check for an overall quick APGAR score. I'm gonna recognize any discoloration in the body, any jaundice. I'm gonna check for activity, any muscle tone problems, grimace in the baby, check for respirations, just make sure that there's no respiratory distress, and check the pulse to make sure that it is not below that 100 BPM. Okay, now that we have established that the baby is in a stable, good condition, this is when we're gonna take the baby's weight. We'll put the baby in a sling and put it on the scale, and then we're also gonna take the baby's height, and this is when we're gonna be assessing either for male or female. All right, so now that we have established that this baby is in no immediate distress, I'm going to listen to the heart, lungs, and abdomen. Alrighty, I'm first gonna listen to the heart. I am listening for any murmurs. All right, I'm gonna move on to the lungs, listening for the air going in and out of the lungs, listening for any crackling. And then I'm gonna move on to the abdomen on all 4 quadrants, making sure that we can hear any bowel movement. All right, everything sounds good to be moving freely there. So we're gonna go ahead and measure the head circumference now. We're gonna take the tape measure and make sure to measure from the very back of the head to the furthest point out, just right above the eyebrow bone in between the eyes. And that's where we're gonna get our head circumference. There we go. That's where we're gonna get our head circumference. We're also gonna make sure to measure the chest circumference. Okay, so moving on, we're gonna be palpating the anterior and the posterior fontanelles, and then we're gonna be palpating along the suture lines, all of these suture lines, to make sure that they can be felt for and that those fontanelles feel flat. All right, so the head overall looks good. It's a good shape, it's a good size. So we're gonna go ahead and move our way down the body. We're gonna start with the eyes, just checking for any jaundice, redness, any sign of infection. The eyes look good. So then we're gonna move on to the ears. The shape looks good. There's no deformation in them. And they have a normal set. There is no discrepancy in the symmetry of the ears. Right, so just observing the mouth and the nose, we can see that there is no obvious cleft lip. So we're gonna check for the rooting reflex by just tapping, and the baby should be moving towards my finger. Next, I'm gonna put my finger inside the baby's mouth. Essentially, I have gloves on right now, and be checking for the sucking reflex, and the sucking reflex looks good. While I am checking for that sucking reflex, I can just go ahead and palpate the inside of the palate, ensuring that there is no cleft lip or any malformation inside the mouth. So just continuing to move down, I'm gonna examine the abdomen. In the abdomen, we're looking for any breast problems, any skin discoloration, anything on the abdomen that screams anything different than normal. I'm gonna check the umbilical cord and make sure there's the 2 arteries and 1 vein inside the stump. I'm gonna go ahead and just palpate the abdomen, checking for any tenderness, checking for any hard lumps that might be in the abdomen. And everything seems to be good. And now continuing to work our way down, we're gonna just examine the genitalia. Like I said, this is a female, and we're just going to make sure that everything is proportional and looks good. We're gonna go up to the arms and just gonna check the tone. We're gonna check the hands to make sure that there's no malformation. We're gonna check the range of motion at the wrist and the elbow. Then we're gonna move down to the feet and legs. We're also just going to check for that range of motion between the ankles and the knees, and then examine the feet to make sure they are proportional, no club feet, no malformation as well. Okay, now we're going to be checking the plantar reflex in the baby. We're going to check both sides by hitting the bottom of the foot and just checking for any reflex in the baby. Ideally, the big toe should be moving and possibly the fanning of the other toes. Okay, now to examine onto the child's back, we're just going to gently prop them up and first look for that stepping reflex when held upright and just gently touching the surface. Then examining the back, we're going to look for a straight spine and no malformations. Also, we're going to be checking the spine and the back for any other discoloration or anything that we see that is going to show a sign of infection or anything really that is out of normal. All right, and while we have the baby, we're just going to be on her tummy and check the anus to make sure that everything looks good there. Then we're going to move her over back onto her back, and we're going to check for that, putting our fingers inside the hands and checking for that grasping reflex. The baby should be able to grab onto the fingers when they are placed in its hand. All right, and the last thing that we are going to be checking for is the moral reflex. We do this last because it tends to upset the child. It is going to be where the child is suddenly dropped, and we're just going to make sure that there is a response from the baby. And now before we decide to send the baby on his way, we want to make sure that everything has been checked off. So I'm just going to go through my chart and double check, make sure that we have checked everything off and that this baby is good to go. We have the date of birth, baby's name, mother's name. We got the heart rate, the weight, the time of birth, the fact that this is a female. We got her respiration temperature. She did in fact get eye ointment. We have checked her length, her tone, her skin color, her head circumference, her chest circumference. We made sure those fontanelles are there and flat. We got her ears, her eyes are showing no signs of jaundice. The nose looks good, the mouth is good. Neck, arms and hands, we checked and auscultated the lungs, heart, and abdomen. We did check her genitalia and rectum. We have in fact confirmed that she is nursing and she has passed urine. Her back and spine look good, and the legs and feet are showing good range of motion. Her reflexes of sucking, moro, plantar, stepping, and grasping all look good, and she is in fact due to receive her vitamin K, and her APGAR score was an 8. So this baby is looking very healthy, and we're just going to redress her and send her back to her parents and see her for her next checkup.